So in this video, we're going to show you how to replace the bearings in our disc brake front hub. The tools that you're going to need are your axle remover, the bearing insertion tool or bearing press, your trusty hammer, and we do recommend using an axle vise for the end caps. And in this case, the replacement bearings are 2 18307 size. So to begin with, you're going to take your hub and you're going to need to remove the end caps. They are press fit, however, an axle vise may help. Just remove them and set them to one side. Then take your axle remover, insert inside of the axle on the rotor side and tap gently to remove the bearing. Set to one side. Then again, using your axle and the axle remover tool, tap out the bearing on the other side and set to one side. Then, to replace the bearings, using your bearing tool, set the first bearing. The black line denotes the non-rotor side, so like so. Add your hub shell and the rotor side bearing, tool and spacer, and tap gently into place. Then simply replace your end caps. The slightly larger of the two end caps is your rotor side, and the shorter is your non-rotor side. In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the bearings in our rear disc brake hub. So for this, you're going to need the hub, the hammer, hub support, a bearing insertion kit, and an axle bearing punch. In terms of replacement bearings, you're going to need 2 6903 bearings for the hub shell and 2 6803 bearings for the free hub. So to begin with, you want to remove your end caps, set to one side, remove the free hub, set to one side, and ensure the free hub spacer comes off, and remove your non-drive side end cap, again set to one side. Now take your hub support and use your axle punch to tap out the non-drive side bearing. Now turn over, again use your hub support and the axle punch to gently tap out your drive side bearing. Set the hub shell down, slide the bearing off. So now we want to set up our bearing tool. Take your axle, slide on the new bearing, add the hub shell and your non-drive side bearing. And press into place gently. So now to replace the bearings in the disc brake free hub, you're going to need a free hub bearing tool, or alternatively you can just use a bearing punch. You just need to ensure that you're punching straight. A bearing press for a 6803 bearing, your replacement 6803 bearings, and some needle nose pliers for the circlip, and of course your trusty hammer. So first and foremost, you're going to take your free hub and we need to remove the outboard bearing. In order to do that, take your bearing punch and slide the internal spacer to one side so that you can gently remove the outboard bearing. Once it's loose, ensure you spread around, set to one side. You can then remove the spacer, keep that safe place. Then use your needle nose pliers to remove the circlip that's holding the inboard bearing. Set that down. Now to remove the inboard bearing, I recommend using one of these free hub tools. Keeps everything nice and straight. Alternatively, you can use your punch again, but just be careful because you do need to get the bearing to pass the seating point for the outboard bearing. Just tap it out gently. That's past the inboard. And set to one side. You'll see now that we have an empty free hub body, so we can start to insert the new bearings. So we insert the inboard bearing first, set it in place. You can take your bearing press, your 6803 drift, and a couple of speed spacers, and tighten. Again, just ensuring that you keep it nice and straight as you pass through the outboard seating point and get the bearing sat inboard. Don't over tighten it. Remove your press and the drift. Now, replace the circlip. And the spacer. Now we can seat the outboard bearing, and again, using your bearing press, press it into place. You want to do this ensuring that the spacer remains centered so that it'll slide back onto the axle nicely. Then finally we're going to reassemble the hub. So first, the non-drive side, end cap, spacer, free hub, drop the pawls into place, and the drive side.